Welcome to an Epiphany with Tiffany. My name is Tiffany, and I've just had an epiphany. This podcast is all about Christian singles looking for community. Christian dating can be quite a mess these days. I'll share stories from my guests and practical tips for successful love. Dating shouldn't be this hard, right? So grab your favorite snack or drink and curl up with this episode, and you might just have an epiphany of your own.
Because we're all in it together. I think that's something that, like, as women and men, like, I think a lot of times it's like us against them, and it's like, nah, man, we're all in the trenches together. Like,
we're all trying to figure this out and navigate it, and I feel like we need to be better at listening to the other side.
Yes. I agree.
So you've read a lot of dating books, apparently.
Oh yes, I have. I read I Kissed Satan Goodbye. I read When God Writes Your Love Story by the Luddites. Oh my gosh, I was very much growing up in the church, like, read all the books, I wanted to make sure I did it right, because I think as I've gotten older, I realized I very much am someone that doesn't want to fail. And so I was like, I'm going to get all the information and God's going to bless me because I'm saving myself and I'm doing it all right. And I'm going to get married at 24 and have kids, and it's going to be awesome. And now at 34, I can tell you that is not how it works. And I can have all the data and have all, my ducks in a row. And, it's not the way that God works necessarily. So yes, I have read all the dating books. And I still read some of them, but I kind of take them with a grain of salt. And it's like, okay, well, this guy's, been married since he was 12. It seems just getting more like 19. So I'm like, am I going to take everything he says to heart? Maybe not. Maybe just glean some wisdom and then.
Yeah, I read most of those too, so I feel that.
Actually, one I read recently was super interesting, and I think it's, been mentioned, I saw online, it was like, Why You Should Marry Mr. Good Enough, or something like that. I'm butchering the name, but it's it's not written by a Christian. It's actually written by, like, a very liberal feminist that lives in New York City, who had her own child using, like, IVF. And it was interesting because in one of the chapters, she blames feminism for why we're still single at this age. And it was very interesting because, like, all the books I've read for the most part are, written by Christians, and this was not. And she still was coming to very similar conclusions. And it was a really good book. I highly recommend that one. I was just like, whoa, I was not expecting to, like, read that,
Yeah. I mean, I agree with her.
I know. Well, that's why I was like, dang.
Yeah. It's... I'm like, do we want to broach that subject? It's like, it's so crazy though, because I'm the big proponent that there's so many issues on both sides. Like when you bring in the feminist, like, viewpoint, right? But then now we have the extreme red pill guys, right? And it's like, that's also not 100% biblical either.
I think feminism from, like, what do they call it? Like, first wave, second wave feminism was good. It was needed, but now it's gone to the other side where it's like, we don't even know what a woman is anymore. Like, it can go, oh man. Yeah,
I know it. And it's crazy to, like, look at it from the historical standpoint of what first wave did versus what modern is doing. And it's just like, it's like we need this huge reverse, like this reversal. And then, but those of us who want the reversal are, like, looked at like we're crazy because why would you want that? And I'm like, I'm not saying I don't want to be able to vote. What I'm saying is we have messed something up. It's so discouraging though, like, looking at all of the stuff. And it's just like, come on, we need to figure something else out. And
and then, like you said, you have the red pill, like, I want my woman who's going to always submit and da-da-da. And it's like, well, we still have autonomy and we still have submission. To me, biblical submission is like, it's not demanded. It's something that is, I respect you so much that I am submitting, versus like, I'm going to be a good wife. And I don't know. Like, I don't know. What subject do you want to go down?
I feel like that was a good start. I mean, I agree on all of that. I've kind of talked to a couple of the other ladies about that so far. Is like, what do we see biblical submission as versus like what a lot of the guys see it as, and it's just, there's this disconnect there. And we all blamed it on the enemy, and how that, of course, what is his one goal, is to kill and destroy, right? And like, what does that look like by destroying the family unit, and
Gosh, yeah.
also destroying your the fact that you were made in the image of God and what that looks like, and your identity as a person in Christ. So anyway, but that's another rant.
Well, it's funny you say that though, like the family unit and stuff, because a couple months ago, I started like turning on praise music, and I got out my like yoga mat, and I've just been like doing like stretching before bed. And I don't know, but it's funny because it turns into like, let me do some push-ups, or let me do like, I don't know, it's just like movement time, but also like more just to like relax me and listen to worship. And I kind of got away from the habit. And last night I, pulled my yoga mat out and I put on some music, and I just like was overcome with this grief in a way of kingdom marriage is not happening. I'm in these groups on Facebook. I have these good godly friends, mostly female, but I know some good Christian guys too, who are wanting a marriage. And it's like we all kind of want the same thing, yet you don't see these marriages happening as much. They happen, like where you see people start dating, and it just like was this overwhelming kind of like just sadness, and also just anger at what the enemy is trying to destroy. And like, so I'm like doing, no one come at me if I was like doing like down dog or whatever, but like as I'm like in this yoga pose, like praying and worshiping, I was like praying and rebuking the enemy, because like I'm not the very like charismatic name it and claim it type, but I do recognize where the enemy has strongholds. And I know prayer is super powerful, and so like just in that moment was praying for like kingdom marriages, and that these people, both men and women, again, aren't looking at each other as the enemy, and it's your fault that women, blah, 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 stereotypical comment, and men, blah, 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 stereotypical comment, but see it as we are broken people that are created in the imago Dei. We're created in the image of God. And what can we do for his kingdom? Like, what is not being done because of all these hangups? Like, and like, it just like, I don't know, something. And I can read someone else talk about this, and I see other people, chat about it. But like, for some reason, when it comes personal, and you're like, God, I want to partner with someone on this side of heaven to do your will. And I feel like it's just so hard to find that, and to find someone that's willing to put self aside, and it's funny because I have these friends, and they're like, I'm looking for this female who hates the government and wants to homeschool her kids and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I get that. Like, I don't trust the government that much either. Right. Yeah. I know. I'll hook you up. I'll get you their name. I was homeschooled. I'm not against homeschooling. But when these guys are putting it out there, like, this is what I want, A, B, and C, and D. And like, I want this, this, and this. I'm like, you are limiting what God could have for you. Like, I'm not saying I never want to homeschool my kids, but that's a lot to put on a woman. That's not even, you guys aren't even talking yet. You know what I mean? Like, my mom homeschooled us to a certain age. I kind of saw where she struggled with that. Like, it was hard. It was just being a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling your kids, trying to bring in, extra income into the family. Like, major respect for my mom. But, I see these posts of like, this is what I'm looking for. And I'm just like, well, I might see that and be like, or know this person. Like, some of these are guys that I know and are friends with. I see that and I'm like, I might be interested, but because I know that's such a hard and fast rule for you that your kids have to be homeschooled, it's like, yeah, in putting God in a box, like, which I don't know. So I've been praying, in my prayer last night was, praying these, these deal breakers wouldn't necessarily be deal breakers. Like, what can God do? I've seen people, women be like, I don't want to date or marry a pastor. I don't want to be a pastor's wife, which I'm like, I get that. That would be hard. I'm not saying it wouldn't be hard, but again, are we putting God in a box? Or heck, you want to get controversial? I will not date anyone that had that. And it's like, I'll say this and you can put this, on the podcast too. My dad was in the ICU on a ventilator for 2 weeks. My decision at that time was based on my circumstances and the information I had. Right. If I could go back, I would not have gotten it. I do regret getting it. But at the same time, like, you can't hold me and villainize me for a decision that I made when my dad, who's like one of my best friends, was, we almost lost him. And so it's like, and I see that in these conversations, like, I want someone that's pure blood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are you pure, sir? Are you a virgin still? Because I could also put that. And I've seen people do that too. Like, I only want to be with a virgin. And it's like, we all have sin. We all have, hang-ups. And I think within the Christian culture, especially, it becomes this is a deal breaker. This is what it's got to look like. And it's like, no wonder you're still single, Jimmy. Like, maybe like let God work in that Yeah. So that's my rant.
That's a really good rant. Really, really, really good rant. I'm over here like, maybe I've been putting God in a box.
I mean, I think the older I get, I realize like I used to be like, I didn't want someone that was 6'3" with six pack, abs.
Right.
Like that wasn't who I was. But I'm 5'7", I'm a little bit taller. And so I was like, I want someone a little bit taller than me. But I'm like, if you meet just an amazing guy and he's not hitting that, like I get why guys get frustrated, like, with that. Like they can't control that, like,
Yeah.
so I really do think like we limit God a lot with what our deal breakers are. And that book, the case for dating or marrying Mr. Good Enough, really spoke on that. Like you got to figure out what your deal breakers are.
I want to read that book now. But yeah, I think so. I think it's like sometimes we get wrapped up in these things that we think should be deal breakers, but sometimes there's a little bit of caveat in that, I mean, I do have my personal stances on all that,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, I think some of the other things that I have been in the past, like, okay, this is a hard no, might be like something that I could kind of look past, or not look past, but like, I guess, discuss and see what the compromise would be versus, just being like, well, you're out. Bye.
Right. Well, and that's like the compromise thing is huge. Like I will be perfectly blunt. I enjoy drinking red wine every once in a while. Like I enjoy having a drink. I used to drink whiskey. It does not agree with me as much anymore because I'm getting older. So we get heartburn. If I met someone that was sober for whatever reason, or, just didn't drink or didn't like it. Like at first I used to be like, I'm never going to be with someone like that. But, I want to hear them out. Like, why is that? Why, was a parent or loved one killed by a drunk driver? Like, what is the reason? Because to me, it used to be like, well, I want to be able to have a drink with wine or a drink with dinner, all that.
Yeah.
And it's like, but am I choosing that over having a kingdom-minded marriage that, because you can have both. I'm not saying you can't have both, but like, what do I want more? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do I want to do, life with someone and, maybe, it just has made me really, the last couple of years has really made me look at my, wish list, which sounds horrible. It sounds like a freaking birthday wish list, but like, what am I looking for? Like, and what are my true non-negotiables? And those don't, some of those have kind of gotten more lenient is the best way to put it.
Yeah, same. And then I feel like some of them have gotten like more of a, this is a definite no.
Right. Yes, absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see those shifts the older I've gotten, because I'm almost 34. So it's like, okay, where's my give and take here?
Being intentional is a huge one for me that has like, I would say is like, that has to be on the table. Like I feel like the guys that I've talked to in the last year or two, one was a single dad. A couple of them actually were single dads. Some of them were like professionals, living out of state, all these things. And it's like, we are grown adults and I will not waste your time. And I would assume and expect you not to waste mine. Because I think what it can come into, especially with, if you want to open that can of worms, dating apps and stuff like that, it's this ego boost, it's this ego pump, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, you're pretty, you seem to have what I want, but like I don't have any intention of following through, but like I appreciate you stroking my ego, which I can fall into that. I get that. Like I think that's just kind of the way social media works and all that. Like it is nice to be validated and to be okay, I still got it, right? Like I still got it going on. Like I still am getting some attention, but I just don't think that's respecting, like what you were saying, someone creating the image of God. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't get, especially if that us ladies maybe get attached more emotionally, not all of us, but like we, when you say things like, hey, I'd like to take you on a date, but then never actually make the plan, or, I want to, I'd love to meet your family one day, but like, like just these things, and there's no follow through on both sides, men and women. It's like, don't do that to people. Like that's just common decency. Like do that to a job prospect, like, hey, I'd really like to work for your company someday, but then you never apply, or I'd really like to work with your company today, and you even apply, you even take the apply, but then you don't show up to the interview. Like that doesn't fly in so many other areas of life. And it's like, I don't know, I'm not on dating apps anymore. kind of did a Hail Mary, and the last person that I met on that and kind of was invested in didn't work out. And so I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not saying I won't ever get back on, but it would take a lot to get me back on there because it feels like Amazon for people. And I don't want to sit there and Amazon for people and you don't even get to read reviews. Now, if you had reviews on there, girl, I might be back on there because I'll be like, all right, what did Susie say about you? What did she say?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Can we make that a thing?
I have seen other people kind of mention and brainstorm around it. So yes, I think we could. I think we could start a GoFundMe and start a dating app where you get to leave reviews, maybe some background checks. I think some of them do that already, but yeah, it's a wild world. I'll put it this way. One of my dear friends who I'm super close with was divorced, and they took a while to even want to start dating post-divorce. They're a single mom.
Right.
Now they're like, I'm ready to start dating. And they're like, I think I should do the apps. And I was like, don't even touch them. Like, but they feel stuck because they're like, how do I meet somebody if I'm not where everybody is? And it's like, it's hard. And I don't have an answer for them. I really don't. It's like, like, here, look at my dating app. When I had them, I was like, here, look at my dating apps. That way you can see, like, I'm not holding out on you. You know, you never, I guess you never know. I know people that have met their spouse on them. I'm not saying they're completely, not effective, but it's just, I think it's that mentality too. Like I'll swipe, get to know you. Again, you can stroke my ego some, but like, this one little hiccup or this one thing I'm not completely sold on, I'll just keep swiping again, and it's like, again, I think that discredits the fact that we're made in the image of God. We are not just these disposable people. Like there is feelings and personality and passion and dreams and fears and failures all behind those pictures. Like we don't recognize that because we're just going to keep swiping.
I touched on that a little bit in my last episode because I was listening to That Single Show. And it was one of the first interviews, and Kelly had come on with Bob, and they were talking about this idea of, guys saying, oh, they're just a picture on the internet. Like she had somebody basically say something like that to her, or a friend. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, and so she was like, what the, like, no, there's a person behind that phone, And so, she had some really good points in that episode. And I was like, yes, Kelly, go. But I kind of like took off from that and like made my own episode about it because it's just so, I was in the dating apps at that point, and now I'm back off of them myself, and it just, it's so nice.
I can breathe.
Yeah, I can breathe. I don't feel like I have to check my phone all the time. I'm still checking it for social media, but
yeah, right.
but you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be like, oh, did he respond?
Right.
So it's just like that idea though. But it was also convicting to me having to remember, okay, there is a guy on the other side of the screen too, and I need to treat him the way that I would want to be treated. And, if I'm not interested, saying, hey, I'm not interested, but thank you for your time, something like that, instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to just not talk to them and not respond. Like,
right. Having awkward conversations, it's hard, but I think, I laughed because a friend of mine was like, oh, I was on dating apps, and she's like, I just got frustrated and I deleted it. And she goes, I feel bad because I was talking to this guy and I didn't tell him, I just deleted it. And I was like, I've done that before. I'm not saying I haven't, but I realized, I'm like, okay, like if I don't feel like that, maybe that connection's super strong, I will say, hey, I'm feeling a little stressed with this. I'm going to go ahead and delete the apps, and either, give them my, I don't say email, but I guess it's not email, like number, like if I feel like it's going to continue, like I'll like connect with them. But like, I think it's just like common decency too. Like, I know it's super cliche, but like, how would you want like your brother or your sister treated? And like, I feel like with some of these guys, I think they're good men. I really do. I think they just, so I'm thinking back to some of like the last 2 or 3 guys I dated, like, one hadn't dealt with his divorce, like, and just wasn't in a healthy spot and wanted the closeness and connection of a relationship because I think his marriage was lacking that. And I'm not invalidating that. I think that's a very valid need, but like, you have to deal with your shit. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but you got to deal with that before you bring someone else in. Like,
right.
It's like, sorry, I definitely like Christian who curse sometimes, not a lot, but like, you have to deal with your stuff,
Yeah.
And like, that was a hard one because I remember being like we had gone on a couple dates and I was like, oh, like he seems like a nice guy. But then I just saw these kind of like, I'll say yellow flags. They weren't red flags. They were yellow. But when you put them all together, we're starting to look real red. And I cut things off. And I remember being so frustrated because I was like, Lord, when is my person going to come along? Like, I don't want to keep cutting these things off, or them not working out. One guy, bless his heart, told me at the end of the date that he was still married, technically, that the divorce hadn't gone through yet. And I was just like, and he didn't tell me that from the jump, because he's like, I didn't think you would go on a date with me. I was like, I probably wouldn't, but at the same time, like, and it's funny, the last 4 guys I dated, 3 of them are now married already, within the last 5 years. So which that's been a thing I've had to wrestle with, because I'm like, Lord, like, that could have been me. But it's like, yeah, it could have been. Like, I don't think there is the one. I don't think, it's this journey to find our other half. Like, I think I could have ended up with any of those guys and been married now, but would it have been healthy, and would it have been the best, what God's best for me? And so, like, that's stuff I've had to come to terms with. And even, like, one of the last guys that I spoke with, good guy, had a good head on his shoulders, but wasn't willing to follow through on what we talked about. And like, you can say one thing, but like, if your actions aren't, you got to believe their actions. And I know that's super popular. I hear that all the time. Like, if people show you who they are, believe them. And I'm like, but it's true. Like, it really is true. Because like, I think, and I don't know, I don't want to say all women are like this, because I know that's not true. But like, when someone tells me something, I trust them. I'm a very like trusting, loyal person. And so then you have this issue where it's like, you're saying one thing, but you're doing something completely. And I'm in like turmoil now, because I'm like, I believe you when you said that. And I also believe you're capable of doing it. But this outlier reason you're not following through. And it's like, to be the one that's like, all right, I'm going to step back from this. Like, I know what I'm worth. I know what I don't want to say that I deserve to be pursued, because I think we're all broken and we deserve hell, let's be honest. But like, I know what I'm looking for, and so to really like be like, to again step back and be like, nope, like, this isn't it, is so frustrating. Because that's when it's like, you have the random Thursday night and you're like, all right, I'm just going to go up to the local bar and find biker Bob and be like, let's get married. And he probably would agree, because he's missing 4 teeth and I'm a decently attractive person. And then the Lord's like, get back in your house.
Let's just go back inside, sweetie.
Yeah, literally. Or that's where you call your friend and you're like, talk me off. I'm about to put my pants on and go up to, Walmart and find Jimmy in the struggle. The struggle is real. It is.
It is very real. I find myself doing that all the time. I'm like, somebody better talk me off of this freaking ledge.
Yep.
Like, I'm about to, because I've done that with dating apps. I'm like, somebody better talk me off the edge. I'm about to download them again, or whatever. And the only reason I got back on one was because I got a free code, and so that was the only reason I got back on them recently. It was because it was a free code, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna check this one out. Nope. No better than any of the other ones. And not that it was a waste of time, because I feel like I learned some things, but at the same time, I'm like, ugh, why did you do that to yourself? Because now you're just even more annoyed than you were 4 months ago.
Yep, that's funny. It's the same thing. I got on this one and I literally put in my profile, like, woman from the South downloads dating app one final time before deleting everything and buying a mountain home and raising goats. Like, that was my profile. And, people like commented on it. They're like, this is hilarious. Like, good luck, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I met, like, the last guy was on that. And at first I was like, after things didn't work out with him, I was like, oh, I'm going to keep it. And I was like, no, like, you said this was your Hail Mary, and clearly did not work. And I deleted it, even with the free code, because it was like a free year of premium. Oh, yeah. Dang. And so I was like, I just this does not bring peace to my heart. And I think God can 100% use dating apps. And I think also God can 100% bring someone the old fashioned way. And like, where I'm at now in this, point in life, I'm like, it's not dating apps. It's just too emotionally draining to get your hopes up. And then like, it's like whiplash,
Yep.
Emotional whiplash.
Yep. Amen. And that's like the hardest part is it's funny because everybody keeps telling me, like, and everybody, I mean, my really close friends, they're like, you need to find somebody the old fashioned way because you really are an old fashioned girl. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not finding guys the old fashioned way. Like I have guy friends in our lovely little group.
Yep.
And then like I don't know, like I go out here and maybe it's just the state I live in.
Undisclosed.
In an undisclosed state that most people already know where I am.
Yeah.
Uh, but maybe it's just a state that I live in. Maybe I need to move before I can start the dating thing again. But at the same time, when I think about that, I'm not at a place where I can move because God hasn't opened those doors. So then it's like, so am I just like not stuck, but am I just waiting on all of it?
Yeah. I think too, you hear these people say like it just takes one, and they're right. It does just take one person, like, for that connection to happen. And I've seen it with I have a dear friend who I've known since middle school who is getting married in November. And she met her fiance on Facebook dating. Now, this girl is super crunchy, granola girl, loves to be out in the outdoors. Like she's kayaking half the time. She works at like a nature retreat center.
Wow.
And she's just like, oh, like I'm just going to download Facebook dating. And I remember after she met her guy, I tried it. And let me just tell you, here where I'm at in the South, it is very different from where she was in the Tennessee mountains. Let's just put it that way. Like we didn't have mountain men, we have rednecks. And which to any of your listeners, I'm not judging you, but just very, very different. Different types of people. And I was like, oh, I'm going to give it a try. And I just wasn't, super impressed. And I'm like, okay, that worked for her. That was her story. Right. Doesn't mean it's going to look like it. It's same way, like, friends that meet their spouse on the airplane when they're flying to England. And like, literally, like, I'm like, I don't know about you, but I'm always seated next to like the 70-year-old woman who I end up being friends with, like love them. We chat about all sorts of things, but it's never like the single guy that loves Jesus, like, but that's one of my friend's stories. That's how she met her spouse. And so it's like, and thank God it's not cookie cutter. Like, I'm actually really happy it's not like, everyone's story is so unique, and so I'm just trusting in that, but however it comes about, it's going to be worth it. Even if it's taken a little bit of time, longer than I expected. I said something to my niece. I'm an aunt. I love, love, love my nieces and nephew. And I said something the other day about like when I have kids, and my oldest niece is like, she'll actually be 12 tomorrow. And she looked at me. She's like, can you still have kids? And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. And what's funny is her parents are all in the health field. Like everyone in my family's in the health field. And she's like, yeah, she just like looked at me like perplexed, like, oh, like she thought that ship had sailed like for me. And I was like, oh, out of the mouth of babes. I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. Does that look like biological? Does that look like fostering, adopting? I don't know what that looks like. Right. But I just laughed when she said that. She's like, oh, like she's also told me I can't be picky. And so I'm like, all right, you're done. We're not going to go on ice cream dates until you're done being so honest.
That's hilarious. I've had similar experiences with my nieces like that. And my nephew has never said one thing, even though he's the oldest. He's made a joke like once, and I just kind of gave him like this death stare, and he was like, and never again. I'm like, thank you. Yep. But I can hold it over him. I'm like, I practically raised you. So like, you're my kid. So just get over it. That's what I say to him. Yeah. But the other three, like, well, it's the middle two that I've like had experiences like that with. And the younger one was more recent. And it was so funny because like, I love my sister-in-law because she was just like, now, sometimes it looks different when you have kids. Aunt Tiffy might be able to adopt or, whatever, but she takes really good care of you. So, that can also be like, you can also be her kid is like how she kind of summed it up. Cause she's only 7. And so I was just like smiling. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I've helped raise all of you in our own little ways. So, you count, even though you're not mine.
Yeah. Oh, I always said that. My nieces and nephews, it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given. Probably, like one of the top 3. And I've always said, like, they're my kids before I have kids. And we have so much fun. And I'm so thankful for that because I love my aunts and uncles growing up. I love them, but I wasn't close with them, and so like getting to be a part of their life, my nieces and nephews is huge. And I laugh because I'm a big, like, definitely a big jokester. And so I tried to convince one of them that they were actually my kid. And like, I was like, well, because she's like, I'm your mini me. And she really is. She looks just like me, acts just like me, very, very similar. And I was like, well, that's because, I'm actually your mom. And she's like, no way, auntie. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm doesn't it make sense, right? And like, meanwhile, my sister, their actual mother was like, oh my gosh, Erin, please stop. You can't. They're gonna go, tell someone this, and I'm like, it was fun.
That's hilarious.
Just to see if they believe.
Yeah, I know. That's funny. They really are a great gift. And I've told them that too. I'm like, you're my kids before my kids. Like, you're the ones I get to practice on, but I still get to send home.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, you guys are the test subjects. I'll have it perfect after you guys.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, so this went well. This did not go well.
Yes.
But then each of them are so different too. So it's like, okay, this probably would have worked for this one, but it didn't work for this one. So
yes. Well, they have such like tender hearts too. Like I've had them like tell me like, Auntie, I really hope you get married one day. Like, aww. And like that just for them to, because we don't like talk about it a lot, even like for them to acknowledge that, like, and see that as a desire, and also like, we want you to have a kid so that we can be friends and I can babysit them because they're starting to get older. Like, to like the preteen. So by the time, hopefully I have my own kids, like there's going to be a big, there's probably going to be a big age gap, but they're like, well, we can babysit them. Like, yep, you can. Like, again, that looks so different. Like, I think for me growing up, like my sister is only 2 years older than me. And like, we're best friends. And so like, I think growing up, I thought, oh, we're going to have kids around the same time. We're going to raise them. And it's like, now it's like, okay, they're not going to necessarily be the same age, and part of that, like, I think, and this kind of goes on to a little bit of a different subject, but like, I think it is okay and it is good to mourn what dreams you had and what you thought they were going to look like. So like, that's been something that I acknowledge, like, this kind of hurts. This isn't what I was expecting. This isn't how I thought God was going to work it out. And then move forward, like not live in that space, but, acknowledge it and keep going and, grieve it for what it was, or actually grieve it for what it wasn't, and then move forward.
Yeah. Oh, same. I've been doing that whole grieving process probably for the last 4 years ish, maybe. I mean, off and on before that, but really the last 4 years for sure, like ever since I turned 30. And, it's just it's a lot. And then each birthday, it's like, here we go again, but having the faith that it'll work out how it's going to work out, and it'll be okay. And it'll be beautiful because it'll be some testimony, like,
I think something I've learned in the last year is, I had a good friend of mine who actually was a coworker turned roommate turned friend. So like met in that order. We were coworkers. We ended up renting a house together, and, she became a friend, and, she passed away unexpectedly about a year ago, like last week. And she was such a sweet girl, but she definitely, like, walked to the beat of her own drum. Very unique, was super into like anime and Korean K-pop music, all this stuff. Like, we didn't have very similar hobbies or anything, but we both were, believers, and we both, wanted to get married one day. Like, that was something we talked about. And she's like, I can't wait till I can be a mom, and I can't wait for all this thing. And so when she passed, it was this, with the grief of losing her, that was hard, because it didn't seem fair. But also, like, I think the thing that I still wrestle with even to this day is she, didn't get to see that dream come to fruition. And knowing she's in glory and she's in perfect peace and she's not missing that, I think in my humanness, like, to be like, well, God, she didn't get to experience that. Like, that was such a big desire. And it kind of made things just come into perspective for me, because I'm like, all right, God, are you still good? Even if I don't see these things to fruition. Obviously not in my timing. We've already established that. Not in my timing. But like, maybe not even now. Like, I mean, I would like to think, in the next couple of years I'll meet someone and get married. But like, what if that doesn't happen ever, number one? Or what if it doesn't happen until I'm like 60? Like, is God still good? Is God still God? And is he still good? And is he still good to me? Like, those three questions. And I can't say I've come to perfect peace with it. It's something I'm still wrestling with, but like, it makes you take every day and kind of, oh gosh, I hate how cliche this is, but like, live it to the fullest. You know what I mean? Like, what gift do I have right now that I've been entrusted with? What are some dreams that I can control? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I laugh because I am training to do like a baby triathlon. It's called a sprint triathlon. It's like a little baby triathlon. It's not an Ironman. I don't think I'll ever do an Ironman, but I've wanted to do one of these races since I was in college, and I'm well past college now.
Right.
And I think after losing my friend Alyssa, I was like, all right, we're going to do it. And like, I am not a active person. Like I work from home, was more sedentary. And I'm like, all right, like this is again, something that I can control. Like, what can I do? What habits can I change to start doing this? And I still have a ways to go. The race isn't for a while. But it's a dream that I'm making happen. And I think you hear people say that all the time, like, oh, if you're single, we'll just start some hobbies and maybe you'll meet someone that way. And they act like it's all like rainbows and butterflies. And I'm here to say like, it's not rainbows and butterflies, but I do think we are asked to work with what we have, like what has God given us? Like we are blessed beyond measure. Our life might not look like our friends. I have friends that were married, got divorced, and are already remarried. And I'm like, get in line. Like I'm still waiting for the first round and you're on round 2 here. Like get in line, or my little brother got married before I did. That was a really hard one. I'm like, I was first, bro. Like you skipped me and now you have this, but I love his family and I would never, ever change anything about how, they are. So anyway, all to say, like, I think just living each moment, like, cause we aren't promised tomorrow. And I don't want when I come to them, when I'm gone and people are remembering me like, oh, well, she was kind of just like little, like, sad, bitter person who was upset that she didn't get married when she thought she would. Like, I want them to be like, oh no, like she experienced that pain, but she still lived as full of a life as she can. She still obeyed God when he said, you need to start a small group in your home as a single woman and invite all these strangers in, like, or you need to go volunteer at the jail. Like, I haven't done that one yet. I felt the Lord calling me to that. I haven't done that one yet. But like doing these like little steps, because it's like, I can't just hold life back because I'm waiting for someone to enjoy it with. Like, I mean, I hope homeboy, wherever he's at in this race, like, I hope he catches up. But I'm not going to slow down much longer, like I'm just going to keep, he can catch up wherever that's at. I also suck at running, so it really won't be that hard. Very slow. I probably tripped on a rock. Like, you can catch up, my man. You can catch up.
That was awesome. I agree. I've been doing it too. Like, I think like in my grieving, I kind of stopped, and like wasn't living life. I mean, I was still doing things outside of, being shut down, but
yes.
Yeah. But I was still trying to live life. But I think I had gotten to this point of, I was like, this is it. Like, this is your little world right here, Tiffany, and you can't go outside of it. And, this is where you need to stay, because how else is your person going to come and find you? And which is so stupid.
No, but I think we all got stuck in that.
No, we did. We definitely did. Like, I feel like that's a universal thing. Yes. Yeah, that's very much a universal thing. But like within that, it wasn't just the, the marriage and kids that I thought I was going to have at this point in time. Like, I actually had 2 friendships that ended up ending in that time frame too. So I was like grieving those, but it was not, I don't want to say my own fault, but when you pray specific prayers and God answers them, you just kind of have to go, oh, well, crap. I was praying the prayer of like, God, remove any person or things that are not of you and that are going to keep me stuck. And I just kept praying that over and over and over and over and over and over again. And within the course of a year and a half, I had 2 friends that the friendships are just done. Wow. And I was like, okay. So,
like that.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I wasn't expecting them, but now another like year-ish later, like I can kind of see how, not that they were keeping me stuck, but I was keeping myself stuck in the sense of like, they were part of my little world and I couldn't really see past that. And, and there's nothing against them or anything, but I can kind of see now, like where God is taking me, they probably couldn't follow. And I had to be okay with that. It's been hard.
I think too, that's not dating related, but I think we grew up thinking, whoever our friends are, like friends for life, ride or die.
Yeah.
By the way, I cannot stand ride or die. I'm like, what is it? someone break that down for me with crayons and paper because I don't understand it. But like we don't realize that like friends are for seasons sometimes, you know,
Yes.
and like just again, like anything in life, some stuff is just literally for a season and then it's like, oh, and so, but that grieving that a friendship, you know, that didn't last, or I mean, just so much. I think a lot of times, and maybe it's, I would say our parents' generation is just like, well, pull yourself up and keep going. And it's like, I think it's okay to, yeah, you do that at some point, but you also got to like acknowledge, like, this let me down. And sorry, that's my dog. She also would like to chat with you.
Hello, puppy.
She's like, why are you talking? I'm done hearing about your emotions.
But yeah, you make a good point though. Like, those of us who were raised by boomer parents, you know, and they're just like, okay, you just got to keep moving through because they were raised by parents that came through the Great Depression. So, you know, they literally had no other choice but to just pick it up and keep going. Right. So then, of course, it makes sense that our boomer parents were the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
they don't deal with their stuff though either. Like that's what I see. Like they're like, oh yeah, this isn't an issue, but it's like it is an issue. It comes out in different ways. Like, and I don't want to repeat those same mistakes if I don't have to.
Exactly. But see, that's where being self-aware comes in.
Yes.
And working through your shit, to be honest, before you get involved. Yeah. You know, and it's just kind of like just balancing that. What does that look like? You know?
Yeah. I see that often with like everyone saying, you know, oh, I don't think therapy is the answer. And I'm like, therapy isn't the answer. Jesus is the answer. However, therapy can be a tool to work through these hangups, you know, like, and why not? I'm not saying go to a woo-woo therapist who's going to have you like check all your chakras and all that. Like find a good Christian one, you know, like I laugh because Solomon says in the Bible over and over again, and Proverbs, like there's wisdom in the multitude of counselors, like seek wisdom. You find it like it over and over. It says, and like obviously he's not meaning like a LMHC, like a licensed mental health counselor, but having someone who can speak truth into your life and call you on your like this isn't good, this isn't healthy, the way you're dealing with it isn't good. And like I think that's where, you know, to bring it back to dating, like when I was dating a guy that, you know, was still saying comments about his ex, but then trying to like we're only a couple dates into this relationship, whatever it is, we weren't exclusive, but like into figuring this out, and like you're trying to win me over, but then still making comments about your ex. Like you haven't dealt with that. Like that's not how you woo someone, by bashing another woman, whether it was her fault or not. Like it's not, this isn't winning me over, buddy, you know, like it's so anyway, therapy, I think I am an advocate for it. Do it in a healthy way. And I think that's oddly like the Christian culture is against that in some ways. And I never understood that really. Like
me either.
I think it's going to be a net positive.
Yeah.
In general, like you're going to have a good result usually. Like obviously that's not everyone's circumstance, everyone's, you know, case, but you got to find somebody that will be able to call you out, but give you the biblical principles and, you know, the biblical like worldview. Because that's my therapist. She smacks me up one side and down the other all the time, and I'm just like, dang it. You know, but it's so good for me. Like I've gone through and been able to process a lot, and you know, but she's always bringing it back to God, always bringing it back to Jesus, you know, always referencing the Bible, like, oh, well, what does the Bible say about this? You know, like, and it's so great to have somebody that's outside all of my situations. You know what I mean? Objective. They are objective.
Yeah. And she can just sit there and be like, look, I'm here for you, but I'm also going to call you out when you're, you know, self-sabotaging or whatever, insert issue here, you know, and
one thing that they do. Like I found so many, which this could go on forever, but like I think back in the day, like your community was that for you. You know what I mean? Like we were more connected to our neighbors. We were more connected to our family. Like now we're kind of more connected to our phone. And, you know, especially as single people are like dealing with a lot of this kind of solo, like working through emotions, working through grief of dreams, you know, yet to be. And it's like, you know, back in the day, maybe you didn't have to go to a counselor, but like now it's like, it's different. It is different. And so like to have someone again that, like you said, that isn't in the trenches with you, but can take a look at it objectively and be like, oh, okay, like you're saying this happened and this is how you responded. Like, what if you responded in this way? And you're like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought about that, or it's just, I think it's a huge tool that is maybe underutilized a lot is within the Christian community.
I would agree. So. Wholeheartedly.
And everyone said amen. Okay, amen.
Yeah, there was another amen. It's so funny because I find myself going, so have you been on your own healing journey?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, because we always ask that, when was your last relationship?
Yeah,
I hate that question, but it's so important in the sense of like, are you just getting out of one, or have you dealt with it?
Right. I mean, for me, it'd be like, when was your last situationship? Because it's like, it's, and I've seen this thing on the internet, which cracks me up, but I think there's actually some wisdom to it, is like, instead of being like, when are you single or when's your last relationship? It's like, is there anyone who is under the impression that they are in a relationship with you right now? And I'm like, that is so true. Because there's like this gray area of, we're talking, but are we exclusive? Are we dating? And like, I don't know. I love I'm gonna start asking that. Is there anyone that thinks they're in a relationship with you? Because it also makes them check their motive. Like a guy be like, hey, like you've been chatting with this girl, but does she realize that, does she think it's just you two? Like she thinks it's exclusive, or, are you talking to multiple people? Which that goes back into the dating apps, which, hey, I guess if you can do that without getting attached to people, more power to you. I can't talk to multiple people at the same time. It just seems weird.
It's draining.
It is draining. And I don't feel like truly, I mean, I guess some people could say it, but like, I don't feel like you're being truly yourself and truly open and vulnerable when you're like chatting. I'm not talking like a couple conversations, but I'm saying like when you're like at that point, when you've been, talking for maybe a month or two, maybe we've gone on some dates, but then they're like, well, I'm just going to keep you kind of in my pocket here, but I have this other person. And it's like, again, like, don't waste my time.
Yeah.
If you're not that into it, that's fine, because clearly we won't work out. Like, I want someone that's like, dang, you're a gem. Like, you are someone I want to pursue, and I'm going to put these others to the side while we figure if there's anything, here.
Yep. Another amen. I hope you gentlemen are listening, because that was gold. So yeah, just stop talking to multiple people. It's not, I don't know. Like, we keep hearing intentionality, right? And I know that that's being a little bit overused, but I feel like the intentionality behind intentionality, I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? The point in using that word, right, is that it kind of fleshes out the people who are not. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might be overused, but it still holds weight in the sense of like, I think there's a question about integrity and communication too. So like, being intentional also points for me to integrity, which points to communication.
Yeah. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like,
yeah. Yep. Oh, I know.
You know what I was saying?
Yeah, I do.
I had someone I was talking to that was like, they didn't live in the same state as me. And, we like we could tell that, oh, there might be something here. Let's like explore it a little bit. And naturally the question of like, well, what do you like, even before we got to that, like, let's like explore this more. It was like, what are you looking for? And like, clearly we don't live in the same state, it would be long distance. And, he had said to me like, well, yeah, I think long distance, is doable, but it takes intention. Like, they said that was their words. And I was like, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, you're a grown adult, I'm a grown adult. Like, we both have jobs. Like, it is going to take an intention. Like, there's got to be obviously like planes, trains, automobiles, like, like take intention. And that one didn't work out because their yes wasn't a yes and their no wasn't a no. Like, they didn't, their actions didn't back up what they said. And it's, for me, it's like, you're the one that said that first, like, that was there's a song by Maverick City Music, and it's talking about God, but it's like called Man of Your Word. And it's like, that's what I want to be, or what I'm looking for in someone. And that's what I want to be, a woman of my word. Like, I want to, like, I had another guy. I don't have these men like coming in. I don't want that to seem like, but I had a guy from one of the dating groups reach out. And there was like some weird disagreement that came up kind of out of nowhere. And he's just like, well, you're just not willing to admit that what I'm saying is correct. And by the way, I didn't know this guy that well. And I'm sure he's a decent guy. I'm not here to bash him. Like, I'm sure he's a good guy.
Right.
But for him to be like, you're just not willing to admit. And I'm like, I don't like being wrong, but I am not at that point in my life where I refuse to admit when I am wrong. Like I will admit when I'm wrong. I will admit when someone is going to say, like, if you say something and you are correct, like I'll put my tail between my legs. I don't have a tail, by the way. I just can't say that this day and age. I will I will humbly and humility, like, be like, you're right, I was wrong. Like, I want to be someone that's, it can be held accountable and called out when I'm in the wrong, and I think sometimes it's like this person that was kind of like, yeah, it takes intention and then didn't follow through. Like I kind of called them on it and I'm like, you can't just do that, like it messes with people. There's another person on the other end of this line. Like it is not just, a pretty face, like there's and I think that plays into dating. I think that plays into everyday life, how people treat their waiters at restaurants. Like these are human beings. We are created in the image of God. Like treat them well, even if they're rude to you. You don't know what they're going through. Like just be good humans and be willing to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, I know. Ooh, that's a little convicting.
Oh, girl, I don't practice what I preach. Trust me.
I reached this point, right? Like I'm normally pretty decent at that, but then we'll reach a point where it's like, okay, I'm gonna tip over on this other side because I just cannot take how rude these other people are being. So it's more like they were being that way first, and then I've gotten to this point of like, okay, I can't take your crap anymore, so I'm gonna, snap back at you. And but that's still also like, just turn the other cheek, Tiffany.
Right. Well, and that's a balance too. Like, especially when it comes to dating, it's like, turn the other cheek, give people grace, give them a benefit of the doubt. Like, I think one of the questions was like, one of the guys that you sent me was like, one of the guys was like, what if someone's having a bad day? Do you want them to hold it in or be open? And it's like, I think all of us are like, oh, don't hold it in, like be open. But then you got to be willing to hear what they have to say. Like, and that might not be something we want to hear, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, how do we extend grace with that? But also like, I mean, if they're like, I just killed somebody, obviously you're gonna be like, okay, like there's balance, like, all right, I'm gonna just call my friend Larry down at the police department. Like there's gotta be grace. Like even with the server that's rude, it's like, I mean, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know, I laugh with my work. I work in finance and I have to call this woman in Brooklyn. And Brooklyn people, if you put this in the episode, please don't come for me. But New Yorkers are just a different breed. Like they're kind of more abrasive. They're very direct. And this woman is just not a ray of sunshine. And I'm in the South where people, even if it's fake, they at least come off as nice, Yeah. This woman's just real blunt. And I really got like upset and like just how she would talk, and she would cut me off every few minutes. And finally I was like, you know what? I don't know her personally. I don't know what she's going through in this life, but like she still deserves kindness and love. And I think with even like bringing that to dating, like we see these people that are red pills or whatever, the incels. I'm like, really? Like the whole incel thing is super fascinating to me because I'm like, do I fall into that? Like, I don't want to be celibate either. Like I want to be married right now, like, am I involuntary celibate? They still deserve love and kindness, with truth. You got to add some truth in there, but like, I don't think we need to be writing each other off as much as we do.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think that points back to like the conversation I had with one of the other girls. And it was like, we had a whole thing about, are we cutting off like talking stages too soon? And this kind of points back into our other conversation about like our non-negotiables, and like, what is, are we taking, again, putting God in a box, but also taking into account like too many other things that are more considered worldly, like instead of biblical? Like, are we not looking at like their God-given character and what does that look like? What are their spiritual gifts? How have they served? Like all those things. We're looking at this other laundry list of things because that's what society tells us is like important or not important.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like what is? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, Yeah. And it's hard because, the like physical attraction is important. And, like, what does that look like though? But again, it's like, are we cutting people off because of society and like, what the general society is telling us we should be into,
Yeah. I was talking to a guy a while ago who was a Christian, but we never really got into like faith super deeply. But he was like super attractive, like very attractive. And I was like, oh, and I feel like with that, like maybe I held on longer than I should have because I was like, oh, like to take it the other way, like maybe I let it go on too long because I'm like, oh, like let's just like maybe it will change. And it's like, again, going back to that statement that drives me, that's like people will tell you who they are. Like they will tell you who they are. And it's like, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a good guy. But like I remember like I was like, oh, like he checks all these boxes, but I was like, does he? Does he though? Like, does he protect your heart? Does he show up with the stupid intention word? But like, you know what I mean? Is he pursuing you? Like, it's like when you step back, maybe not, and that stinks. Like it really stinks. But it's just I don't think high standards are a bad thing. I don't think, but they need to be high in the right areas. You know what I mean? Like you said, is this a worldly non-negotiable or is this a godly non-negotiable? Like, and it's hard. It's especially the longer you're waiting, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'll let that slide. And it's like, well, no, because, and you see this, I feel like again, all over social media, but it's like, it's better to be lonely single than like in a marriage where you're so lonely, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's so true. Like, I don't, at the end of the day, even though it's hard to say, I would rather stay single than be in a marriage to be in a marriage. And, because I want physical intimacy, or I want even the status of, like tired of being this only single one, like I want to join in the conversations, whatever, it's like I will take the lonely and walking with my savior than just in a lonely marriage that isn't pursuing Christ. I have all these, I was gonna say I have to run symbolic with this. My parents are celebrating actually yesterday, 2 days ago, they celebrated 40 years of marriage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I think people see that and they're like, oh, well, you just have the perfect little life. And it's like, what they don't know is both my parents came from broken families, both came from divorce homes. One was like a kind of more like church scandal-y scenario. Not what it is today, because it was, a long time ago. And the other one, my grandfather just left, and he was like, I can't handle being married. I can't handle having kids. And that had detrimental effects on my aunts and uncles, on my parents, So when my parents met, they met in Bible school in the 80s, and ring before spring, I think that's what it is. Yeah, like so. Yeah. Like or bridal college. They met there, and they were told by their counselors and the teachers that they should not get married because they both came from broken homes, and therefore they will not know what a healthy marriage looks like. And that was their advice. That was, don't do it. And praise God, my parents did still get married, and their marriage isn't by all it's not perfect at all. It's not no marriage is, but they still have kept God as best they can at the center of it. And they like are still choosing each other. And trust me, I've seen things, I laugh because I feel like I give them marriage advice sometimes and they look at me and like roll their eyes. And I'm like, listen, I just heard how you, spoke to them and how you cut back at them real quick. Like, it's just like, that's your wife. That's your, you're a team. Like they aren't the enemy. The like issue at hand is the enemy. That's who, it's the enemy is Satan. Like that's who you need to be upset with, and
right.
I laugh because like I feel like if my kid gave me marriage advice, I'd probably roll my eyes too. But I see that with them, and like the worldly, not even the worldly, the biblical advice at the time when they got married was don't do it, and they still did it, and I wouldn't be here if they did it, And so like to me, like for them to still be married, 40 years, my siblings and I got together and I was like, we're gonna do a party, and my mom's like, I don't like being the center of attention, I don't want it, and I go, it's not about you. About us and the fact that we need to celebrate that you guys have stayed married 40 years. Like that is a testament to God's goodness, and I want that, which means like, oh gosh, I'll do the math here. 40 years, like it's going to look different, but like I still want what they have, like someone, like two very imperfect people that are going to pursue holiness even when it's not popular, even when it's not, their friends, had made more money in their jobs and all that. And like, they still were faithful to what God called them to. And they still homeschool their kids. That's right, folks. Come on down. I'll homeschool the kids. Maybe. We'll talk
Me too.
it.
I will.
You're a teacher, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm like. Oh, I'll teach to a certain grade. Once we get to algebra, I'm out. I am out.
But see, that's where your community, random plug, that's where your community comes in. You find somebody that's really good at algebra and have them teach them.
Yes, that is true. That is true. You know?
Yeah. And then you can just carry on with everything else.
Teach people how to. I'll do the dating class because I've read all the books.
There you go. This is how you date and how you do not date.
Like, are you still single? I'm like, shut your mouth.
But that's so cool that your parents been together that long. Mine are coming up on 41.
That's awesome.
So, same thing. My mom was like, I don't really want to celebrate. And I'm like, nah, first of all, we kind of sort of skipped over your 30th. Oops. So we're 40. And it was so cool. Like people that were in their wedding came.
Yes.
And it was other people who weren't able to fly in, sent like flowers and really cool gifts and like cards and stuff. And that were like, can't believe it's been 40 years, like congrats and, all that stuff. And I'm just over here like, like I'm a mess, and yeah, their marriage isn't perfect. And same, I will sometimes be like, you probably shouldn't talk to each other like that.
Have you guys thought about counseling? I know you're against it, but have you thought about it?
I know, right? But it's funny though to see, because it's like we were kind of talking about earlier with like the generational stuff. It's like, okay, this I know is coming from that stuff, and so like, how am I going to deal with it? So I don't carry that into my future marriage, and like, what does that look like? But again, like, we're always going to be imperfect this side of heaven, so it's just, where's that balance come in? And how much are you praying for your future husband? How much you know what I mean? Like, what is your future relationship in general? And because I feel like that is such a huge thing that our generation kind of sucks at. Even though we have all the books that say, hey, you should be praying for your future husband, we don't do it.
Yeah. Or it's like, just show up soon, which is fine. I've definitely prayed that, but like,
yeah.
Are you praying for the character? Are you praying for them to not be someone who's apathetic or passive, and praying that over myself too, like that's willing to do the work? Like, yeah, I think, like you said, our generation is so easy to like just tap out when it gets tough. And it's like, and I've seen that with dear friends and even family where, the person's like, oh, well, this is hard now. I got to do work and I'm out, and it's like, that's not how our parents got to 40. Like when our parents got in that situation, it's like, I'm not saying they weren't perfect, but like they would go to each other, they would go to prayer, they would, they knew it wasn't going to always be that honeymoon. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. And that's where, like, I know some people are like, oh, love isn't a choice, but like it is. In those instances, it is a choice. You are choosing to stay. And caveat there, obviously, if you're in an abusive relationship or anything like that, please don't stay, like, the most loving thing in that situation you can do is get, you and yourself and your kids out of that situation. But yeah, I think I laughed because what did I buy the other day? I bought something and it broke. And I was like, I don't want to buy a new one. Like, this is perfectly, it was blinds. This doesn't sound really crazy. Literally blinds like that behind me. Yeah. They were in fine condition, but like the mechanism on them was broken. And so like, I was trying to figure out a way to fix it. I was watching YouTube videos and basically came to the conclusion, there's no way to fix it. And I had to throw them away. And these are perfectly capable, total good shape blinds, and you can't fix them. Like we just live in a disposable society, and it's like our relationships are coming like that now. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not willing to put in a little bit of, effort, and I'm just going to toss it and start over. And it's like, we're, again, human beings. We are different from these things that are inanimate objects. Like we have souls, we have purpose, we have all these things. It's like, let's just not toss each other to the side. And I think that's a reminder I have to keep in mind with dating too. Like when I get frustrated with these people on dating apps or whatever, it's very easy to just be like, oh, you're the problem. And it's like, no, like, I'm not maybe in their life to call them to do better, but like, I don't have to villainize them. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. It's all about the perspective and how we look at it, and not getting like, for me, like I have to remind myself, again, like they're not the enemy. Like whatever it is that they're doing that's bugging me, not necessarily them. Yeah. Because the enemy knows our footholds. and he will use and abuse those. And so it's also like, what are we doing on the opposite side if somebody's continuously pushing our buttons or whatever? Like, how are we working through that instead of snapping at them or, just saying, oh, I'm done with you because you've triggered me. Like, okay, but that's still your problem, that like the trigger is still within you.
Right. Yeah. How you respond. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yes, there is a caveat for people who are knowingly pushing your buttons. Okay, that's different.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody that doesn't really know, and then all of a sudden you're ticked off, like your response to that is the only thing that you can control. You can't control what they're doing on the other side. You can try.
I think that's too, I just laugh because with social media and everything, it's like we apparently don't know when to engage and when to disengage. I laugh because these groups that, we're both in.
Yep.
Get so up in arms and I have to tell you, here's my dissertation on why you're wrong, and go out. And I'm like, you know what? For certain things, maybe I will engage, but I don't got time for that. I'm just gonna keep scrolling and be like, God bless you. Hopefully you find what you're looking for. I'm not it. I'm just gonna keep going. And I think that's why the dating apps too. I tapped out on because I'm just like, I don't have time to sift through. A lot of these are decent looking guys, seem okay, and I'm just like, nope. I don't have time for that. I don't have time.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the stories and the perspectives that were shared in this episode. Please share it with a friend whose dating life might need some help. Wink, wink. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter @AnEpiphWithTiff. I really hope to see you there. There are multiple ways that you can support my show. You can pray for me, rate, review, and share any episode that you love. Or you can even financially contribute by going to patreon.com/An Epiphany with Tiffany. Until next time, I'm Tiffany, and I hope you just had an epiphany.